She said she was too old to find love, but the billionaire's love never gave up. Story of true love. I'm 52 years old. My time for love is over. Thelma's voice didn't shake when she said it. At 52, she'd made peace with loneliness. Her daughter was grown. Her mother's grave was still fresh. Her small bookstore in Charleston barely kept the lights on, but it was hers. She didn't need rescuing. She didn't want complications. And she definitely didn't need a 40-year-old billionaire walking into her store at closing time, drenched from the rain, holding a first-edition book she'd been searching for her entire life. The same book her mother used to read to her before everything fell apart. "How much?" he asked. "It's not for sale," she whispered. "Everything's for sale," he said. "Name your price." But what he didn't know. The price for Thelma's heart wasn't measured in money. And what she didn't know. Richard C. Weldon didn't take no for an answer, especially not when he'd just found the woman he'd been searching for his whole life. If you're new here, welcome to a love story that proves it's never too late. Smash that like button right now, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Lagos? London? Los Angeles? And let me know, do you believe a 52-year-old woman can find real, earth-shattering love with a younger man, or is that just fantasy? Subscribe so you don't miss a single moment of this journey. And to my beautiful returning viewers, you already know I'm about to put you through it. Thank you for coming back. Now grab your tea, your wine, whatever you need, because you're going to want to stay until the very end. Let's go. The rain came down in sheets that October evening, turning East Bay Street into a river of streaming headlights and blurred storefronts. Thelma stood at the window of Turning Pages, her bookstore, watching Charleston drown. 52 years old, and she still loved the rain. Her daughter Simone called it her melancholy phase. Her late mother had called it reflecting. Thelma called it Tuesday. The store was empty. It usually was by 7 p.m. on weekdays. She'd already counted the register, $243. Barely enough to cover tomorrow's expenses, but she'd made it work for 6 years since she'd opened this place. She'd make it work tomorrow too. Her phone buzzed. Simone's name lit up the screen. "Mom, did you eat today?" Thelma smiled. 26 years old, and her daughter still mothered her. "Yes, baby. Had a sandwich at lunch." A real sandwich, or coffee and denial. Thelma laughed out loud, the sound echoing in the empty store. "Go take care of your patients, Dr. Shanks." "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Hadn't been fine since her mother died 4 months ago. Since she'd cleaned out the house she grew up in and found the letters. Dozens of letters from her father, the man who'd left when Thelma was 7, begging for forgiveness, begging to come home. Letters her mother never mentioned. Letters that explained everything and nothing. The bell above the door chimed. Thelma turned, already forming the words, "We're closed." But they died on her lips. The man standing in her doorway looked like he'd walked out of a magazine shoot and directly into a hurricane. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, rain dripping from his sharp jawline. His white shirt clung to broad shoulders, nearly transparent from the downpour. He held a leather messenger bag against his chest, protecting whatever was inside. And his eyes, gray, intense, focused entirely on her, held something that made Thelma's breath catch. Desperation. "Please," he said, his voice deep and slightly breathless. "Please tell me you're still open." Thelma glanced at the clock. 7:15. She should say no. Should lock the door behind him as he left, go upstairs to her small apartment above the store, and heat up leftover soup. Should. "What do you need?" she asked instead. He stepped inside, leaving puddles on her hardwood floor. She didn't care. Something about the way he moved, careful, purposeful, like every step mattered, made her forget about water damage. "I'm looking for a book," he said. "This is a bookstore. That's typically what people look for here." The dry humor slipped out before she could stop it. Her mother's humor. The defense mechanism that had gotten Thelma through 2 failed relationships and a lifetime of disappointment. His lips quirked. Almost a smile. Fair point. He approached the counter, set his bag down gently, and pulled out a notebook. The leather was worn, the pages yellowed. He flipped it open, and Thelma caught a glimpse of cramped handwriting. I'm looking for a first edition of The Velveteen Rabbit, by Marjorie Williams. Original 1922 publication, illustrated by William Nicholson. Thelma's heart stopped. Literally stopped, then started again with a painful thud that made her press her hand to her chest. That's an extremely rare book, she managed. I know. I've been looking for 3 years. He looked up from the notebook, and his eyes met hers. My mother used to read it to me. She died when I was 12. The book was lost when my father remarried, and his new wife threw out everything that reminded him of my mother. I've been trying to find the exact edition, same year, same illustrator, ever since I had the money to look. Thelma couldn't breathe. Her mother had read her that exact book. That exact edition. She'd inherited it when her mother died, found it tucked in a box of childhood memories with a note, for Thelma. Some things are real because we love them. Why that specific edition? Thelma heard herself ask. Because it's the one she held. The one her fingers touched. The one that smells like her perfume if I close my eyes and remember hard enough. His voice cracked, just slightly. I know that sounds ridiculous. I'm 40 years old. I should be over losing my mother. You never get over losing your mother, Thelma whispered. You just learn to carry it differently. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Like he'd just seen her, really seen her, for the first time. You understand, he said softly. I buried my mother 4 months ago. Thelma's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the counter. And I have the book you're looking for. Have you ever met someone and immediately felt like they understood a part of you that no one else could see? Drop a comment and tell me about it. And seriously, do you think this is fate or just coincidence? Let me know what you're thinking. Richard C. Weldon stared at the woman across the counter and forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful. Not in the polished manufactured way of the women at fundraising galas or board meetings. Not in the way that made him feel like he was looking at a carefully constructed image designed to impress. She was beautiful the way autumn in Charleston was beautiful, warm, golden, rich with history and depth. Her skin was deep brown, flawless except for the faint lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and loss in equal measure. Her hair was natural, silver threading through dark coils that she'd pulled back in a loose bun. She wore no makeup, just gold hoop earrings and a simple cream sweater that had seen better days. She had to be in her early 50s, but she carried it with a grace that made age irrelevant. And her eyes, dark brown, almost black, were watching him with a wariness that made him want to earn her trust. You have it, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. You actually have it. I do. She didn't move. But I need to be very clear about something, Mr. Weldon. Richard Weldon. He extended his hand. She looked at it for a long moment before taking it. Her hand was small, warm, and calloused in a way that told him she worked with those hands. Built things. Fixed things. Thelma Shanks, she said. And Mr. Weldon, the book you're looking for belonged to my mother. She left it to me when she died. It's not for sale. The disappointment hit him like a physical blow. He'd been so close. 3 years of searching, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on rare book dealers and auction houses, and he'd finally found it in a small bookstore in Charleston that he'd only walked into because his driver had gotten lost on the way to his hotel. Ms. Shanks, I understand it has sentimental value, but... No, she interrupted gently. You don't understand. This book is all I have left of her voice. When I hold it, I can still hear her reading it to me. When I smell the pages, I'm 7 years old again, safe in her arms, believing the world is good. You can't put a price on that. He should walk away. Should thank her for her time and leave. Should call his assistant and have her continue the search. But something in Thelma Shanks' eyes stopped him. Pain. Fresh, raw pain that mirrored his own. What if? Richard heard himself say. What if I'm not asking to buy it? What if I'm asking to borrow it? One night. Let me sit with it, remember my mother, and I'll return it to you tomorrow. Undamaged. Unharmed. You're asking me to trust a complete stranger with my most precious possession. Thelma's voice was flat. Yes. That's insane. Probably. Richard pulled out his wallet, extracted his driver's license, 2 credit cards, and a business card. He laid them on the counter. Here's my identification. I'm the CEO of Weldon Maritime Solutions. We're headquartered here in Charleston. If I don't return your book, you know exactly where to find me. You can sue me. Ruin me. I'll sign anything you want. Thelma picked up the business card. Her eyebrows rose. You're that Richard Weldon? The shipping magnate. That's what Forbes calls me, yes. You're worth $3 billion. 3.7, but who's counting? He tried to smile. Failed. Money can't buy everything, Ms. Shanks. I've learned that the hard way. She studied him for a long moment. He forced himself to stay still, to let her look, to let her decide. Why do you want it so badly? She finally asked. What's happening in your life that makes you need this book right now? The question caught him off guard. No one asked him questions like that. People asked about stock prices, shipping routes, quarterly earnings. They didn't ask about his life. Tomorrow is my mother's birthday, Richard said quietly. She would have been 73. And I realized this morning that I can't remember what her laugh sounded like anymore. I can see her in my mind, can remember the words she said, but the sound of her voice is fading. I thought if I could hold that book, just for one night, maybe I could remember. Thelma's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back, but not before Richard saw them. Wait here, she said. She disappeared through a door behind the counter. Richard stood in the silent bookstore, listening to rain hammer against the windows, and wondered what the hell he was doing. He had a dinner meeting in 2 hours. His assistant had called 4 times. He was supposed to be reviewing contracts for the Singapore expansion. Instead, he was standing in a bookstore, soaking wet, begging a stranger for something money couldn't buy. Thelma returned carrying a small book wrapped in cloth. She set it on the counter, unwrapped it slowly, reverently. There it was. The Velveteen Rabbit. Original 1922 edition. The green cloth cover slightly faded, the spine cracked from years of reading, the pages yellowed but intact. Richard's hand trembled as he reached for it. Don't, Thelma said sharply. He froze. She picked up the book, held it to her chest. I need you to understand something. This isn't just a book to me. This is my mother's voice. This is every night she read to me when my father was gone and she was working 3 jobs and barely keeping us fed. This is every moment she chose me over sleep, over rest, over everything else. Do you understand what I'm trusting you with? I do, Richard whispered. Because it's the same thing I lost. Thelma studied his face. Then, slowly, she handed him the book. Their fingers brushed. Electricity shot up Richard's arm, unexpected, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Thelma felt it too. He saw her eyes widen, saw her pull back slightly. One night, she said, her voice unsteady. You return it here tomorrow before 6 p.m., or I'm calling every lawyer in Charleston. I'll be here at 5, Richard promised. He held the book like it was made of glass. Carefully wrapped it in the cloth she'd given him. Slid it into his bag with a gentleness that made Thelma's breath catch. Thank you, he said. You have no idea what this means. I think I do. Thelma's voice was soft. Richard turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Miss Shanks. Yes. Would you like to have coffee with me tomorrow? When I return the book. I'd like to hear about your mother. If you're willing to share. Thelma's hand went to her throat. A defensive gesture. Protective. Mr. Weldon, I don't even know you. That's what coffee is for. Getting to know someone. He smiled, a real smile this time. And please, call me Richard. I'm 52 years old, Thelma said bluntly. I'm too old for whatever you think this is. I'm 40, and I think this is two people who understand loss having a conversation. Nothing more. Liar, a voice in Richard's head whispered. You want everything more. Thelma seemed to wage an internal war with herself. Richard watched emotions flicker across her face. Interest, fear, longing, resignation. Just coffee, she finally said. 5 o'clock tomorrow. You return the book, we have coffee, we go our separate ways. Deal. Richard extended his hand. This time, when Thelma took it, neither of them let go quickly. Good night, Thelma, Richard said softly. Good night, Richard. He walked out into the rain, clutching the book to his chest, and didn't see Thelma collapse into her chair the moment the door closed behind him. She pressed her hand to her heart, felt it racing like she was 25 again. What the hell was that, Mama? She whispered to the empty store. What did you just do to me? The rain answered with thunder. Thelma laughed, a slightly hysterical sound, and locked the door. Okay, let's be real. Did you feel that chemistry, or was it just me? And can we talk about the age thing? She's 52, he's 40. Is 12 years too much of a gap, or is love just love? I need your thoughts in the comments because I'm invested. Also, would you have given him that book? Be honest. Richard's penthouse suite at the Wentworth Mansion overlooked the Charleston harbor. Usually, the view calmed him, reminded him why he'd moved the company headquarters here 5 years ago. Tonight, he barely noticed it. He sat in the leather armchair by the window, the book resting on his lap, and tried to slow his racing heart. His assistant, Marcus, had called 6 times. His COO, Patricia, had sent 12 texts. The Singapore contracts were waiting. The investor dinner was in 45 minutes. He didn't care. For the first time in 28 years, since his mother died and his father told him 12-year-old boys don't cry, Richard C. Weldon didn't care about business. He carefully opened the book. The pages smelled exactly like he remembered. Old paper, dust, and something sweet he couldn't quite name. His mother's perfume? Or just memory playing tricks? He turned to the first page, and his mother's voice filled his head. There was once a Velveteen Rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. Richard's vision blurred. He was 12 years old again, sitting in his mother's lap despite being too big for it, listening to her read. She'd been sick even then, the cancer that would take her 3 months later already stealing her strength, but she'd read to him every night. Real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. Tears slid down Richard's face. He didn't wipe them away. His phone rang. Marcus again. Richard declined the call. Sent a text. Cancel everything tonight. Personal emergency. Marcus's response was immediate. Are you all right? Do you need anything? I'm fine. I just need tonight. He set the phone aside and kept reading. Somewhere around page 15, his mind drifted from his mother to Thelma Shanks. The way she'd held this book like it contained her whole world. The way her eyes had filled with tears when he'd told her about his mother. The way her hand had felt in his, warm, real, alive. The way she'd looked at him like she saw past the money, past the suits, past the carefully constructed image of Richard Weldon, billionaire CEO. She'd looked at him like she saw Richard. Just Richard. The boy who missed his mother. The man who was still searching for something money couldn't buy. At 40 years old, Richard had built an empire. He had homes in 6 countries, a private jet, more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. He'd dated actresses, models, executives. He'd been engaged twice. Called it off both times because something was missing. He'd never felt what he'd felt in those 30 seconds when Thelma Shanks' hand touched his. Recognition. Like coming home after being lost for years. You're being ridiculous, he told himself. She's a stranger. You don't even know her. But he wanted to. God, he wanted to. Richard pulled out his phone, opened a new contact, and carefully typed, Thelma Shanks, Turning Pages Bookstore. He didn't have her number. But he'd be there tomorrow at 5. And somehow, he needed to convince a 52-year-old woman who thought she was too old for love that she was exactly what he'd been searching for his entire life. Even if he'd only just met her. Even if she'd probably laugh in his face. Even if this was the craziest thing he'd ever done. Richard looked down at the book in his lap and smiled. Thanks, Mom, he whispered. I think you just led me exactly where I needed to be. Meanwhile, 2 miles away, Thelma sat in her apartment above the bookstore and called her daughter. Simone answered on the first ring. Mom. It's 10 p.m. You never call this late. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need to tell you about something strange that happened. Strange how? Strange like the ghost in the store strange, or strange like you actually took a day off strange? Thelma laughed despite herself. Strange like a man walked into the store tonight looking for Grandma's book. Silence. Then, the Velveteen Rabbit? Your Velveteen Rabbit. Yes. Please tell me you didn't sell it. I didn't sell it. I loaned it to him. For one night. Mom. Simone's voice rose an octave. You loaned your most precious possession to a stranger? He's not exactly a stranger. He's Richard Weldon. As in Weldon Maritime? As in Forbes' richest men in Charleston? That Richard Weldon. That would be the one. Thelma heard rustling, imagined her daughter sitting up in bed, fully awake now. Mom. Why did Richard Weldon walk into your bookstore looking for a first edition of the Velveteen Rabbit? Thelma told her everything. The rain. The desperation in his eyes. His mother. The birthday. The way her hand had trembled when she'd handed him the book. The way she'd felt when he'd touched her. She didn't mention that last part. Didn't have words for it yet. So he's coming back tomorrow at 5 to return the book, Thelma finished. And we're having coffee. Just coffee. As strangers who both lost their mothers. Nothing more. Mom. Yes. Do you hear yourself right now? What do you mean? You sound like you're trying to convince yourself of something. Simone's voice gentled. Mama, when's the last time you went on a date? This isn't a date. It's coffee. With a 40-year-old billionaire who looked at you like you hung the moon. Your words, not mine, because you just described the way he looked at you, and it was definitely moon-hanging territory. I didn't say. You said, he looked at me like he saw me. That's moon-hanging, Mom. Thelma pressed her hand to her forehead. Simone, I'm 52 years old. So he's 40. He's a billionaire. He's probably just being nice. Probably feels sorry for the old woman who helped him. First of all, 52 isn't old. Second, you're gorgeous and you know it. Third, if he felt sorry for you, he wouldn't have asked you to coffee. He'd have said thank you and left. Simone paused. Mom, you've been alone for 4 years. Since Terrence. Don't say his name. Fine. Since the jerk left. You've been alone. You've been grieving Grandma. You've been running yourself into the ground with that store. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. The universe isn't trying to tell me anything. This is just a coincidence. You don't believe in coincidences. Grandma didn't raise you to believe in coincidences. Thelma closed her eyes. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Everything happens for a reason, baby girl. You just gotta be brave enough to see it. I'm scared, Thelma whispered. I know, Mama. But maybe that's exactly why you should do it. After they hung up, Thelma stood at her bathroom mirror and really looked at herself. 52 years old. Silver in her hair that she refused to dye because her mother had worn her silver like a crown. Lines around her eyes from smiling through heartbreak. A body that had carried a child, survived 2 bad relationships, buried everyone she'd loved except Simone. She wasn't young anymore. Wasn't the woman men like Richard Weldon noticed. "You're being ridiculous," she told her reflection. "It's just coffee. He's returning the book. You'll never see him again." But her heart didn't believe it. And that terrified her. Real talk, when you've been hurt before, when you've convinced yourself you're too old for love, how do you open your heart again? Drop a comment and share your story because I know some of you have been exactly where Thelma is right now. And would you take the risk if you were her? Richard returned the book at exactly 5 p.m. Thelma had spent the entire day preparing for this moment, which was insane, because it was just coffee. Just a conversation. Just 2 strangers with dead mothers and broken hearts. She'd changed her outfit 4 times. Settled on dark jeans and a burnt orange sweater that Simone had bought her last Christmas and insisted brought out her glow. She'd left her hair natural, the silver and black coils framing her face. Gold hoops. A touch of lip gloss she immediately wiped off because it felt like trying too hard. At 52, Thelma had forgotten how to do this. The bell above the door chimed at 4:58. Richard walked in looking nothing like the rain-soaked, desperate man from last night. Today, he wore dark slacks and a navy sweater that probably cost more than Thelma's monthly rent. His hair was styled, his jaw clean-shaven. He carried the book in both hands like it was made of gold. But his eyes, those gray eyes, held the same vulnerability as yesterday. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." Thelma's voice came out steadier than she felt. Richard approached the counter, carefully set the book down. Undamaged. Unharmed. As promised. Thelma picked it up, checked the pages automatically. Everything intact. Everything perfect. It even smelled like Richard now. Something expensive. Cedar and rain and something uniquely him. She clutched it to her chest, tried to ignore how much that pleased her. "Thank you," Richard said. "Last night, you gave me something I didn't know I needed. I heard my mother's voice again. I remembered her laugh. I remembered who I was before I became this." He gestured vaguely at himself. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Thelma carefully wrapped the book in its cloth, set it aside. Did it help? The remembering. More than you know. Richard's smile was genuine, warm. "And now I owe you coffee. There's a place 3 blocks from here, Magnolia Brew. Have you been? I own a bookstore in downtown Charleston. I practically live at Magnolia Brew." "Perfect. Shall we?" Thelma hesitated. Last chance to back out. Last chance to say thank you and goodbye and return to her safe, lonely, predictable life. "Just coffee," she heard herself say. "Just coffee," Richard agreed. But the way he looked at her promised everything but. Magnolia Brew was packed with the afterwork crowd, but somehow Richard secured a quiet corner table. Thelma suspected money had exchanged hands, but she didn't ask. She ordered Earl Grey tea. Richard ordered black coffee. They sat across from each other, and for a long moment, neither spoke. "So," Richard finally said, "tell me about your mother." Thelma's eyes burned. "You first." He smiled. "Fair enough." He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. Her name was Catherine. Catherine Marie Weldon. She was a kindergarten teacher. She loved poetry, terrible romantic comedies, and gardenias. She used to sing off-key in the kitchen while making breakfast. She read to me every single night, even when she was too sick to get out of bed. And she died believing I'd be okay because my father promised to take care of me. "Did he?" Thelma asked softly. "He remarried 6 months later. Threw out everything that reminded him of her. Told me 12-year-old boys don't cry." Richard's jaw tightened. "I haven't spoken to him in 15 years. I'm sorry." Don't be. I learned early that family isn't always blood. It's who shows up, who stays. He looked up, met her eyes. Your turn. Thelma took a breath. Her name was Dorothy. Dorothy May Torres. She raised me alone after my father left when I was 7. She worked 3 jobs, housekeeper, night shift at a diner, weekend catering. She never missed a school event. Never let me see her cry, even though I knew she did. She read me the Velveteen Rabbit every night because she said it taught the most important lesson in the world. What lesson? That becoming real, becoming who you're meant to be, requires being loved so deeply that it changes you. Even if it hurts. Even if it wears you down. The love makes you real. Richard's eyes glistened. She sounds incredible. She was. Thelma's voice cracked. She died of a stroke 4 months ago. Sudden. No warning. One day she was here, the next she was gone. And I found letters she'd hidden from me. Letters from my father, begging to come back. She never told me. She let me believe he just abandoned us and never looked back. Why would she hide that? I don't know. And now I never will. Thelma wiped at her eyes. I'm sorry. This is too heavy for coffee. No. Richard reached across the table, covered her hand with his. This is exactly what coffee is for. The real conversations. The truth. His hand was warm, solid, real. Thelma should pull away. Should maintain distance. Should protect herself. She didn't. What about you? Richard asked. Tell me about Thelma Shanks. Besides the bookstore and the incredible mother and the daughter who's a doctor. Yes, I looked you up online. I'm not sorry. What makes you who you are? You looked me up? I'm a businessman. I research everything. He grinned. But I only found the facts. I want the truth. Thelma laughed despite herself. The truth is, I'm boring. I read books. I drink too much tea. I watch terrible cooking shows even though I can't cook. I talk to my mother's grave every Sunday. I worry about my daughter constantly even though she's more successful than I'll ever be. I'm 52 years old and I'm still figuring out who I am. That's not boring. That's being human. What about you? What's the truth behind the Forbes profile and the billions? Richard leaned back, considering. The truth is I'm lonely. I've been lonely since I was 12 years old. I built an empire thinking success would fill the hole my mother left. It didn't. I dated women I didn't love thinking one of them would feel like home. They didn't. I bought houses and cars and art thinking objects would matter. They don't. He met her eyes. And then I walked into a bookstore last night and met a woman who understood loss the way I do, and for the first time in 28 years, I didn't feel alone. Thelma's breath caught. Richard. I know what you're going to say. You're too old. I'm too young. You don't know me. This is crazy. He leaned forward. But what if it's not? What if the universe put me in the rain in front of your store at exactly the right moment? What if your mother and my mother are up there somewhere laughing at us for being stubborn? That's a lot of what-ifs. I've built a $3 billion company on what-ifs, Thelma. I'm very good at calculated risks. I'm not a business deal. No. You're so much more important than that. His voice dropped, intimate. Have dinner with me. Tomorrow night. Let me take you somewhere beautiful and talk about something other than dead mothers and loneliness. Let me make you laugh. Let me try to prove that 52 and 40 aren't numbers that matter when two people connect the way we did. We barely know each other. That's what dinner is for. Richard. Thelma pulled her hand back gently. I need you to understand something. I'm not the kind of woman men like you date. I'm not young. I'm not glamorous. I don't fit into your world. My world is empty without someone real in it. And you, Thelma Shanks, are the most real person I've met in years. You're going to break my heart, Thelma whispered. I can feel it. You're going to make me believe in something impossible, and then you're going to realize I'm just an ordinary woman with a failing bookstore and too much baggage, and you're going to leave. Or, Richard said softly, you're going to break mine by not giving us a chance. The coffee shop noise faded. The world narrowed to just the two of them, this table, this moment. Thelma thought about her mother, about the Velveteen Rabbit, about becoming real through love, even when it hurts. One dinner, she heard herself say. But I'm paying for myself. Richard's smile could have lit the whole city. Deal. Though I'm going to argue with you about the check. You'll lose. We'll see. Y'all, I need to know, is Thelma making the right choice? Are you screaming yes go for it, or are you worried he's going to hurt her? Comment below because this is getting real and I need to know you're feeling what I'm feeling. Also, have you ever taken a risk on love that scared you to death? Simone showed up at the bookstore the next morning with coffee and judgment. You said yes to dinner, she announced, setting a latte on the counter. Don't deny it. I can see it all over your face. Thelma looked up from her inventory spreadsheet. Good morning to you too, baby. Mom. Dinner. With Richard Weldon. Tomorrow night. Spill. How did you? Thelma sighed. Did you put a tracker on me? I'm your daughter. I don't need a tracker. I know that look. That's the, I did something terrifying, and I'm pretending I'm fine look. Simone perched on the counter, studying her mother. So, tell me everything. Thelma told her about the coffee. About Richard's hand covering hers. About the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. About the invitation she should have refused but couldn't. And now I have to figure out what to wear to dinner with a billionaire, Thelma finished. Which is insane because I don't even know where we're going and I probably don't own anything appropriate and this is a terrible idea and I should cancel. Stop. Simone held up a hand. You're spiraling. We don't spiral. We plan. What did he say when he asked you to dinner? He said he wanted to take me somewhere beautiful and make me laugh. Simone's eyes went soft. Mama. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. It's a line. Rich men know lines. Or it's genuine. And you're terrified because you haven't let yourself feel anything real since Terrence. Thelma flinched. I told you not to mention him. Someone has to. Simone's voice gentled. Mom, he broke your heart 4 years ago. He said you were too set in your ways, too independent, too much of everything that makes you who you are. And you believed him. You've been hiding in this store ever since, convinced you're too old and too difficult to love. I am 52. And he's 40 and successful and clearly attracted to you, and you're using age as an excuse because you're scared. Simone took her mother's hands. Mama, what did Grandma always say? Thelma's eyes filled. Fear is just love that hasn't figured out how to breathe yet. Exactly. So breathe. Go to dinner. Wear that blue dress I bought you that you said was too young. Let him make you laugh. And if it doesn't work out, at least you tried. What if I fall for him? What if you do? Would that be so terrible? Yes. Because men like him don't stay with women like me. Simone's expression hardened. Men like him. Mom, you don't even know him yet. You're writing a story that hasn't happened. You're rejecting him before he even gets a chance to choose you. I'm protecting myself. You're hiding. There's a difference. Simone squeezed her mother's hands. I know you're scared. I know Grandma just died and you're still grieving and the idea of opening your heart feels impossible. But Mama, what if he's your real? What if he's the love that makes you become who you're meant to be? Thelma thought about the Velveteen Rabbit. About her mother's voice reading those words. About Richard's eyes when he'd said she was the most real person he'd met in years. One dinner, she whispered. One dinner, Simone agreed. And I'm doing your hair. Richard called that afternoon. Thelma was reorganizing the poetry section when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Thelma. It's Richard. Her heart did something stupid. Fluttered. Like she was 16 instead of 52. Hi. I'm calling about tomorrow night. I realized I didn't ask if you have any food preferences or allergies. No allergies. I eat pretty much anything. She paused. Where are we going? That's a surprise. But dress comfortably. And maybe bring a sweater. Richard. Trust me. Please. She should say no. Should demand details. Should maintain control. Fine. But if you're taking me somewhere ridiculous, I'm leaving. His laugh was warm, rich. It did things to her insides she didn't want to examine. Noted. I'll pick you up at 6. I can meet you. Thelma. Let me pick you up. Please. Something in his voice made her relent. Okay. 6 o'clock. See you then. He hung up before she could overthink it. Thelma stared at her phone, a smile tugging at her lips despite her best efforts. You're in trouble, Dorothy's daughter, she murmured. So much trouble. The next evening arrived too quickly. Simone had indeed done Thelma's hair, leaving her natural curls loose and full around her face. The blue dress fit perfectly, knee-length, elegant without trying too hard. Gold jewelry. Low heels because Thelma refused to break an ankle for any man, billionaire or not. She studied herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she forgotten she could look like this? When had she started believing she was invisible? The buzzer rang at exactly 6. Thelma's hands shook as she grabbed her sweater and purse. She took the stairs down to the bookstore's entrance, took a breath, and opened the door. Richard stood on the sidewalk beside a car that probably cost more than her building. But she barely noticed the car. He was staring at her like she'd stolen the air from his lungs. Thelma, he breathed. Wow. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. It's just a dress. It's not the dress. He stepped closer, and she smelled that cedar and rain scent that had haunted her for 2 days. You're stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself. He did. Dark suit, no tie, white shirt open at the collar. Casual elegance that probably came naturally when you were worth billions. He offered his arm. Ready. She hesitated one last second. Last chance to run. Last chance to protect herself. Then she took his arm. Ready. Richard opened the car door for her, an actual person driving, not a rideshare, which made sense but still felt surreal. The interior was all leather and luxury. So, Thelma said as they pulled into traffic. Are you going to tell me where we're going? We're going to my favorite place in Charleston. Somewhere I go when I need to remember what matters. That's not an answer. Patience, Thelma. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to the Charleston harbor. But instead of a restaurant, Richard led her to a private dock where a sailboat waited. A sailboat. Richard. Thelma stopped walking. What is this? Dinner. On the water. Just us, the sunset, and the best seafood in South Carolina. He smiled. Too much. She should say yes. Should tell him this was excessive and she didn't need grand gestures. But the sunset was painting the water gold and pink, and the boat was beautiful, and Richard was looking at her with such hope in his eyes. It's perfect, she whispered. His smile could have melted steel. He helped her onto the boat, and within minutes, they were sailing into Charleston harbor as the sun began its descent. Okay, I need to know. Is this too much for a first date, or is this exactly the kind of romance we all deserve? Comment below because I'm feeling this moment. And when's the last time someone made you feel special like this? Share your stories. The boat was small enough to feel intimate, large enough to be comfortable. Richard had arranged a table on the deck, set with candles and white linens that fluttered in the evening breeze. The captain, a weathered man named James who clearly knew Richard well, promised to stay out of their way. Thelma stood at the railing, watching Charleston fade into the distance, and tried to remember how to breathe. "This is where I come when the world gets too loud," Richard said softly, joining her. "Out here, it's just wind and water and sky. Nothing else matters. It's beautiful." Thelma turned to him. "But you didn't have to do all this. Coffee would have been fine." "I don't want fine, Thelma. I want memorable." He met her eyes. "I want you to know I'm serious about this. About you. You barely know me. Then let's fix that. Come sit. Tell me everything." Dinner was low-country boil, shrimp, crab, sausage, corn, potatoes, served family-style with cold beer and warm bread. Thelma had expected something pretentious and complicated. This felt like home. "You said best seafood in South Carolina," Thelma said, cracking open a crab leg. "You weren't lying." "I never lie. Not about food, and not about what matters." Richard watched her eat with undisguised pleasure. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone more guarded, maybe. Someone who'd be overwhelmed by all this." He gestured around them. "Instead, you're eating crab legs like you've known me for years." "Should I be intimidated?" "God, no. I love that you're not." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the boat rocking gently, the sun turning the water into liquid gold. "Tell me about the bookstore," Richard said. "How did that happen?" Thelma wiped her hands, took a sip of beer. "My mother got sick 6 years ago. Cancer. She beat it, but it changed her. Changed us. She said life's too short to spend it doing things that don't feed your soul. So I quit my job, I was an accountant, hated every second, cashed out my retirement, and bought a failing bookstore in downtown Charleston." "That's incredibly brave." "That's incredibly stupid," Thelma corrected. "I knew nothing about running a business. Still don't, really. But books saved me when I was a kid. When my father left and my mother was working all the time and I was alone and scared. Books were my friends. I wanted to create a space where other people could find that magic." "Is it working?" "The store." Thelma hesitated. Honesty or pride? Honesty won. "Barely. I'm keeping the lights on, but just barely. Most months I choose between paying myself and paying the electric bill. The electric bill usually wins." Richard's expression shifted. Concern, calculation. She saw the businessman emerge. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't what?" "Don't start thinking about how to fix it. Don't start planning how to throw money at the problem. This is mine. My struggle. My choice. I was just going to offer. I know what you were going to offer. And I appreciate it. But I need to do this myself. Even if I fail." Richard studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. But if you ever want advice, just advice, nothing more, I'm a pretty good businessman." "I'll keep that in mind." She smiled to soften the rejection. "Tell me about you. How does a 12-year-old boy who lost his mother become a billionaire shipping magnate?" His jaw tightened. "Old pain, old anger. You work. You work so hard you don't have time to feel anything. You prove everyone wrong, everyone who said you'd never amount to anything, everyone who tried to break you. You build something so big that your father has to acknowledge you exist. And then one day you wake up and realize none of it matters because you're still just that 12-year-old boy who wanted his mother back." Thelma reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. "I'm sorry you went through that. Don't be. It made me who I am." He turned his hand over, laced their fingers together. "What about you? You said 2 failed relationships. Want to tell me about them?" "Not particularly." Thelma tried to pull her hand back. He held on gently. "Fair enough. But can I ask one question? You can ask. I might not answer. What made you believe you're too old for love? The question hit like a physical blow. Thelma looked away, watched the sun disappear into the water. The second one. Terence. We dated for 3 years. I thought he was it. The one. I was 48, he was 53. We talked about marriage, about growing old together. And then one day he sat me down and said I was too set in my ways, too independent, too unwilling to compromise. He said he needed someone who'd bend, and I was too old and too stubborn to change. He was an idiot. Thelma laughed despite the tears burning her eyes. He wasn't wrong though. I am stubborn. I am independent. I don't bend easily. Those aren't flaws, Thelma. Those are strengths. And any man who can't see that doesn't deserve you. Easy to say when you barely know me. I know enough. Richard stood, pulled her to her feet. Dance with me. What? There's no music. He pulled out his phone, pressed a button. Soft jazz filled the air, something instrumental and romantic. Now there is. Dance with me, Thelma. She shouldn't. This was too much, too fast, too real. But she let him pull her close. They swayed together on the deck of the sailboat, Charleston's lights twinkling in the distance, and Thelma felt something crack open in her chest. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. I'm scared, she whispered against his shoulder. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of feeling something that's going to end in me getting hurt. Richard pulled back just enough to look at her. What if it doesn't end? What if this is just the beginning? You're 40 years old. You could have anyone. Why me? Because when you handed me that book, you saw me. Not my money. Not my company. Just me. The boy who missed his mother. The man who's been lonely for 28 years. You saw me, Thelma. And I saw you. The woman who's been hiding her light because someone made her believe she was too much of everything that makes her extraordinary. Thelma's eyes filled. You're going to make me cry. Good tears or bad tears? I don't know yet. He smiled, brushed a tear from her cheek. Then let's find out together. He kissed her. Gentle. Tentative. Asking permission with every movement. Thelma froze for half a second. Then she kissed him back. And the world fell away. There was no age difference. No fear. No doubt. Just this, two people who understood loss and loneliness finally finding each other in the chaos. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Richard rested his forehead against hers. Tell me you feel this too, he whispered. Tell me I'm not crazy. You're not crazy, Thelma breathed. And it terrifies me. Good. Because I'm terrified too. And I haven't been scared of anything in 20 years. They stood there, holding each other as the boat rocked gently, and let themselves believe, just for a moment, that maybe the universe had gotten something right. Y'all, I am crying. Are you crying? Please tell me you're feeling this too. Comment below if you believe in this kind of love. And seriously, when did you know someone was different? That they could change your whole life? Share your story because this community is beautiful and we're all in this together. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a way that made Thelma question reality. Richard didn't just call. He showed up. He showed up at the bookstore during her lunch breaks with food from her favorite deli. He showed up on Sunday mornings to walk with her to her mother's grave, standing silent and respectful while she talked to the headstone. He showed up at closing time to help her reorganize shelves and pretend he understood her filing system. He was present. In a way no one had been in Thelma's entire life. This is dangerous, she told Simone during one of their weekly coffee dates. I'm getting used to him. And when he leaves. Why are you so convinced he's going to leave? Because men like him don't end up with women like me. Simone set down her latte with enough force to slosh coffee onto the table. Mama, I love you, but I'm about to say something you're not going to like. When has that ever stopped you? You're being a coward. Thelma flinched. Excuse me. You heard me. You're so busy protecting yourself from potential heartbreak that you're missing the actual love standing right in front of you. Simone leaned forward. That man is falling for you. Everyone can see it except you. And instead of letting yourself fall too, you're building walls and making excuses and waiting for him to prove you right. I'm being realistic. You're being scared. And I get it. Terrence hurt you. Grandma died. You've had a hard few years. But Mom, you're punishing Richard for crimes he hasn't committed. You're deciding the ending before you even give the story a chance. Thelma's eyes burned. What if I let myself love him and he realizes I'm not enough? What if you let yourself love him and you realize you're more than enough? What if he's the one who's been waiting for you his whole life? Real question for y'all. Have you ever been so scared of getting hurt that you almost missed out on real love? Drop a comment and tell me about it, because I know some of you have been where Thelma is right now. Meanwhile, Richard was having a similar conversation with his COO, Patricia Chen. They sat in his office overlooking Charleston Harbor, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports. Instead, Patricia had her arms crossed and was giving him her, "I'm about to tell you a truth you don't want to hear, look." "You're distracted," she said bluntly. "You missed the Singapore call yesterday. You've rescheduled the investor dinner twice. And you just approved a budget without even reading it." The budget was fine. The budget was for $3 million to expand operations in Dubai. We don't have operations in Dubai. It was a test. You failed. Richard sighed. Fine. I'm distracted. Is there a point to this intervention? The point is you're falling in love with that bookstore owner and you're terrified she's going to reject you because of your age and wealth, so you're overcompensating by trying to be perfect instead of just being honest. I hate that you know me so well. Patricia's expression softened. Richard, I've worked with you for 12 years. I've watched you date models and actresses and executives who looked perfect on paper and made you miserable. This woman, Thelma, she makes you smile. Really smile. When's the last time I saw that? I smile. You smirk. You don't smile. There's a difference. She leaned forward. Whatever you're doing, the showing up, the being present, the not throwing money at her problems, keep doing it. That's what's working. The real you. Not the CEO. Just Richard. What if the real me isn't enough? Then she's an idiot. But I don't think she is. I think she's just as scared as you are. After Patricia left, Richard stood at his window and thought about Thelma. The way she laughed, really laughed, when he made terrible jokes. The way she read passages from books aloud to him like sharing treasures. The way she'd let him hold her hand during dinner but still insisted on paying for her own meals. The way she looked at him sometimes, like she wanted to believe but couldn't quite let herself. He was 40 years old. He'd built an empire. He'd negotiated with governments and corporations and won every time. But one 52-year-old woman with trust issues and a failing bookstore had brought him to his knees. And he'd never been happier. The shift happened on a Tuesday. Thelma was closing up when 3 men walked into the store. Something in their energy made her tense immediately. "We're closed," she said, keeping her voice level. "We just need a quick word," the one in front said. Mid-40s, expensive suit, predatory smile. "I'm David Marchant. I represent the East Bay Development Corporation." Thelma's blood went cold. She knew that name. They'd been buying up properties in her neighborhood for 2 years, converting historic buildings into luxury condos. "I'm not interested in selling. You haven't heard my offer yet. Don't need to. My answer is no." Marchant's smile hardened. "Ms. Shanks, your building is the last holdout on this block. We're prepared to offer you triple market value. You could retire comfortably. Open a bookstore somewhere else. This is a generous offer. This building belonged to my mother. This store is my dream. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale. He stepped closer. Intimidation tactic. Thelma stood her ground. We've already acquired the surrounding properties. Your building is creating complications for our development timeline. It would be unfortunate if those complications forced us to take alternative measures. Is that a threat? It's a reality. This neighborhood is changing whether you like it or not. You can profit from that change, or you can be swept aside by it. Get out of my store. Ms. Shanks. I said get out. They left, but Marchant's parting look promised this wasn't over. Thelma locked the door behind them with shaking hands, then sank into the nearest chair. Her phone rang. Richard. She almost didn't answer. Pride, fear, stubbornness, all the things Terence had hated about her, told her to handle this alone. But her mother's voice whispered, real isn't how you're made. It's what happens when someone loves you. She answered. Hey, she said, voice unsteady. Thelma? What's wrong? How did you? I can hear it in your voice. What happened? She told him everything. Richard was silent for 3 seconds. Then, I'm on my way. Richard, you don't need to. I'm already in the car. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't move. He hung up. Thelma stared at her phone, something warm and terrifying blooming in her chest. He was coming. Not because she'd asked. Because he knew she needed him. For minutes later, Richard walked through the door. He didn't say anything. Just pulled her into his arms and held her while she shook. I'm not going to lose this place, she whispered against his chest. I can't. You won't. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. He pulled back, cupped her face. Thelma, I know you want to do this yourself. I know you're independent and strong and you don't need rescuing. But sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. It's trust. Will you trust me? She should say no. Should handle this alone like she'd handled everything alone for 52 years. But she was tired. So tired of fighting battles by herself. What are you going to do? Make some calls. Do some research. I know people in commercial real estate. Let me see what we're really dealing with here. No money, Thelma said firmly. You don't throw money at this problem. That's not. I know. No money. Just information. I promise. She searched his eyes, found only sincerity and determination. Okay, she whispered. Help me. His smile was like sunrise. There's my girl. My girl. The words settled into Thelma's heart and refused to leave. Okay, I need you all to sound OFF in the comments. Are you team, Thelma should fight this alone, or team, let Richard help her? Because I know some of you are strong independent types who don't want anyone's help, and I respect that. But also, sometimes we need someone in our corner. What do you think? And has anyone ever been in a situation where you had to choose between pride and partnership? Richard spent the next 48 hours making calls. Thelma didn't ask for details. Part of her didn't want to know. Part of her was terrified of how much power he might wield, how easily he might solve problems that had kept her up at night. Part of her was starting to believe he might actually care. They met for lunch at a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the bookstore. Richard looked tired, the kind of tired that came from working through the night, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. Tell me, Thelma said once they'd ordered. Richard pulled out a folder. East Bay Development Corporation is a subsidiary of Marchant Industries. David Marchant, the man who threatened you, is the CEO. They've been systematically buying properties in historic Charleston neighborhoods, converting them to luxury condos, and selling them for massive profits. I know all that. What you don't know is that they've been skirting zoning laws, bribing city officials, and using intimidation tactics on holdout owners. 3 businesses folded last year after Marchant's people made their lives hell: insurance claims denied, permits delayed, health inspections that found violations that didn't exist. Thelma's stomach dropped. So I'm fighting a losing battle. No. You're fighting a corrupt system. There's a difference. Richard leaned forward. Here's what I found. Marchant has a pattern. He targets properties with owners who can't fight back: older people, small business owners without capital, anyone vulnerable. He banks on them being too scared or too poor to lawyer up. I am too poor to lawyer up. But I'm not. Richard held up a hand before she could protest. Hear me out. I'm not offering you money. I'm offering you information and connections. I have a friend, Elizabeth Monroe, who specializes in historic preservation law. She's been trying to take down Marchant for years but hasn't had a solid case. Your building, Thelma, is on the National Register of Historic Places. That gives you protection Marchant's been trying to work around. Hope flickered in Thelma's chest. What does that mean? It means if you're willing to fight, you might actually win. Elizabeth will take your case pro bono, not because of me, but because she wants Marchant. Your building is the test case she's been waiting for. Why would she do this for free? Because some people fight for justice, not money. Richard smiled. Remind you of anyone? Thelma's eyes burned. I don't know what to say. Say you'll meet with Elizabeth. Say you'll let people who care about you help. Say you'll stop trying to carry the whole world by yourself. She should say yes immediately. Should be grateful and relieved. Instead, she asked the question that had been haunting her for 3 weeks. Why are you doing this, Richard? Really? Why do you care so much about some struggling bookstore and the stubborn woman who owns it? Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table, took both her hands. Because I'm falling in love with you, Thelma. I'm 40 years old, and I've never felt like this about anyone. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see me, not my money, not my company, just me. And when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be real. To matter for who I am, not what I have. Thelma couldn't breathe. You barely know me, she whispered. I know you drink Earl Grey tea with too much honey. I know you cry when you read poetry even though you try to hide it. I know you talk to your mother's grave every Sunday and you always bring fresh flowers. I know you work yourself to exhaustion because you're terrified of failing. I know you think you're too old for love when you're actually just scared of being hurt again. Tears spilled down Thelma's cheeks. I know you're 52 and I'm 40 and you think that matters, Richard continued softly. But Thelma, I don't care about numbers. I care about you, the real you. And I'm asking, begging, for you to give us a real chance. Not coffee. Not casual dates. A real relationship where we stop pretending this isn't something extraordinary. Richard. I love you, he said simply. I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy. I know you're not ready to say it back. But I love you, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to leave. Thelma pulled her hands back, pressed them to her face. She was 52 years old. She'd been alone for 4 years. She'd convinced herself she was too old, too damaged, too set in her ways. And now this beautiful, successful, wonderful man was sitting across from her saying he loved her, and every defense she'd built was crumbling. I'm terrified, she whispered. I know. What if we try this and it doesn't work? What if the age difference becomes a problem? What if you wake up one day and realize you want someone younger, someone who fits your world better? What if we try this and it's everything we've both been looking for our entire lives? Richard countered gently. Thelma, I can't promise you it'll be perfect. I can't promise we won't have problems. But I can promise you I'll show up. Every day. Even when it's hard. Even when you push me away. I'll show up. She thought about the Velveteen Rabbit. About becoming real through love. About her mother's voice reading those words. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time. I'm not ready to say I love you, Thelma said finally. She watched hope die in Richard's eyes. But, she continued, I'm willing to try. Really try. If you're willing to be patient with a 52-year-old woman who's stubborn and scared and probably going to mess this up 1,000 times. Hope blazed back to life. I'm willing, Richard said, voice rough with emotion. God, Thelma, I'm so willing. She stood up, walked around the table, and kissed him. Right there in the cafe, in front of everyone, she kissed him like she meant it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Richard rested his forehead against hers. Was that a yes? He murmured. That was a yes. Thank God. They stood there, holding each other, and let themselves believe. Across the cafe, an elderly woman smiled at her husband. Young love, she said. They're not that young, dear. Love is always young, she corrected. No matter how old the hearts. Y'all. I am not okay. Are you okay? Because I am feeling this moment so hard. Comment below and tell me, do you believe them? Do you think they can make this work? And seriously, when did you know you were willing to risk your heart for someone? I need to know your stories because this is beautiful. To be continued. Thank you so much for staying with me through part 8. We're at 8,500 words and this story is just getting started. Make sure you're subscribed because you do not want to miss what happens next. Hit that like button if you're invested in Richard and Thelma's love story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you think is going to happen. Will they fight off the developers? Will Thelma finally say I love you? Will they get there happily ever after? Find out in the next parts. See you soon, beautiful people. Red Heart.